Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 52nd episode of Let's Talk Inclusion. In our new series, we are giving emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And today, we will discuss career readiness for students with additional needs. Our resource person is a very knowledgeable education consultant and education leader, Mr. Michael Purches, who is joining us from Leeds, United Kingdom. And as you know, my name is Manobina Chakraborty. I am the founder of I for Inclusion. Michael, hi. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Manobina. Good to be
Welcome.
back.
Yeah. Welcome
I don't
back
know.
to Let's Talk Inclusion.
I'm not sure how many times I've helped you out on here, but it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thanks very much, Michael. So, may I request you to tell us about yourself once again and the kind of work you are doing at present, please, Michael?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Michael Purchase. I'm based in the UK. Most of my career has been in special education. So I was a head of a special school for almost 19 years. In the last few years, I've been a trainer, a consultant, working with schools around SEND provision, working with schools around disadvantaged pupils. Behaviour is something that really interests me. So I've been working on reducing exclusions projects and so on and so forth. A lot of my work at the moment is with Leeds Beckett University in Leeds, and it's regard to teacher training, which I absolutely love. Seeing youngsters, developing their craft, becoming smashing teachers, and of course, I'm always keen to guide them in terms of having an inclusive outlook in a classroom, being aware of some of the challenges people faces and the strategies to employ to help them. So inclusion, SEND, that's my bag, so to speak. And I'm obviously happy to help you, Manobina, and the people that are listening to this.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for coming here once again. And let's come to our topic now. Work is a central part of adult life. A job can provide a sense of accomplishment and pride, or it can serve as a source of frustration and dissatisfaction. Finding the right job is not easy, even for highly skilled individuals. Doing so is even more difficult for those who lack adequate training or face particular challenges. And it's a known fact that compared to their regular peers, students with additional needs are more likely to experience unemployment or underemployment, lower pay, and job dissatisfaction. What can be done to prepare them for a job while they are in school, Michael?
That's a great question, Manobina, and I'm not sure we can cover it in an hour, but anyway, we'll give it a go, won't we? I mean, it's about preparing for adulthood, isn't it? And I suppose and it is a huge challenge for those with SEND additional needs. It is to be successful adults, as most of us would measure success in terms of adulthood. It's also a great area of stress for parents, isn't it? So parents of children, as they get older, they start to get a little bit anxious about, well, what's going to happen when my child leaves school? Because school is a safe place normally, it's a nurturing environment. In schools, we accept young people with additional needs, SEND, for what they are. We always celebrate their uniqueness and all that goes with that. But then once they leave school, the world can seem a very harsh, cruel place for young people with SEND. So you're right. So it is a huge challenge. Whenever I talk about this topic, I tend to widen it a little bit because we're talking about careers here and employment, and I think we can focus on that in a moment. But I just like to say that the way I tend to think about, and I'll share you something in a moment that I put together some years ago with colleagues working in Bradford Local Education Authority in the UK. But so we do like to talk about, preparing for adulthood, making sure that our young people are healthy, that they understand, what a good diet is and the need for exercise and so on and so forth. It's about them participating in the community and having friendships and all of those things. And the other thing is about some living independently. Now, not every young person with SEND is going to leave school and leave home and be in their own flat or their own property. But I think if we can try and get them as much independence as possible outside of the home, then that's a good thing, isn't it? I did try this just now before we came on air. I'm going to try and share my screen and just show you a graphic, which hopefully will appear. Right, let's give it a few seconds to take. Can we see that yet, Manobina?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm not going to go through this in detail because I think we can. I guess we can share this, Manobina, can't we? Can we put this somewhere where people can access it?
Yeah, we can, of course, in the comment section, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Brilliant.
I will
so long as
do it later on, so that people can access it later on. Is that okay?
That's absolutely fine. So basically, we're talking in the UK about preparing for adulthood, and this is a pathway that we put together for parents and for schools of children, young people in the Bradford district of the UK. At the top, it's got in brackets with an EHCP. Now, in the UK, we have education, help and care plans for children with the most complex needs. So that's a protection for them, really. It's a document that sets out what their needs are and what the provision. So this is different to the Indian context, but I suppose the thing that I want to just sort of point to is that in terms of the columns, these are at different stages, different ages of the child. So for years 8 to 9, so those are 12 to 14-year-olds, during the reviews of their progress, we will ask them, I'll just try and enlarge that a little bit. The review will start off by, what do you want to achieve for the rest of your time in school? And what do you hope to do when you leave school? And what help will you need? So what help would you need traveling around, training, independent living skills, and so on and so forth. So we're starting that process with young people that are 12 to 14. I'll talk in a moment about starting even younger, but this is just to illustrate what maybe you could start to develop in your school or your setting for your youngsters and your parents. Just this sort of model of columns taking you through the ages. So then it goes from 14 to 16, 16 to 18, and then 18 plus. So we're looking always at things of how can we help young people into employment, being as independent as possible, being part of the community and staying well. So that's just an illustration which hopefully will be of use to someone, use to you in terms of your school and starting to think about the sort of things that you need to do and the sort of questions you ask for young people. Is that okay, Manobina?
Yeah, it's very much so. Very much so.
Okay. So let me come back in the room. So yes, we can access that later on, can't we? Let me
All
think.
right.
Stop sharing screen. Right. Okay.
So
Am I back in the room?
I've already removed it from the stream.
Right, brilliant. Okay, so anyway, so we're back in the room, so to speak. So those are the key areas, and that is just to give a little bit of a flavour. Hopefully, maybe provide you with a structure of how you might want to sit down in your school with families and start to think, okay, let's work back, because you don't want to get to children in their final year of school and then you're thinking, oh my gosh, what we're going to do, and they're going to leave next term, and we haven't really got going, we haven't started anything yet. So if you can shift those conversations back earlier, then obviously preparation can take place and we can have those conversations. In terms of employment, I mean, I'll focus on this, Manobina, because I think that's what ultimately this session's about, isn't it? Rather than community and being independent and being healthy, although they're all part of it, aren't they? But one of the things about employment is, and I said they're starting to talk young people when they're 12 to 14 years old. I think it goes back even further. So I think as schools, I think it's important that we make sure we talk to them as early as possible about future options, about their longer goals, their short-term goals. In classrooms, of course, we need to do all we can to make sure that our young people are as numerate and literate as possible. Giving them ICT skills, for instance, all the skills that anyone is going to need on leaving school, depending on, the context you're in terms of employers, what do employers want? So there's a lot to take on board, but just think about key skills for now. A lot of schools will take young people on visits to colleges and universities. They will organise visits, people to come into school to talk about jobs and roles and how they can help, and maybe take them out to schools as well, out to employers as well, to take them around factories or offices or schools or voluntary organizations, shops, where they might be working. So I think that's it in a nutshell. I'm saying let's start really, really early and see what we can do. Before we get to that final year in school where everyone starts running around panicking a little bit, thinking, well, we've not had any conversations, we've done no preparation. I think the key is just to sort of conclude really on that bit. It's talk to young people really early. Talk to them in their primary years. What do you want to do when you leave school? Okay, you want to be this. Okay, what do we need to do to get you there? And it's working back again and building up to it, and setting some milestones really of things to achieve in the school time. Is that all right, Manobina? I don't know if I've answered your question there.
Very much so. Very much so. Actually, these are the questions sent to us by our viewers. The other day when we announced this episode, we asked for some questions from our viewers as well. So some of them sent these questions. And as you say that all these skills development are needed and we should start it really early. Generally what happens, Michael, schools and parents both want to inculcate academic skills in children. Like reading and writing and spelling and handwriting, mathematics, some other language, and computer, art, or music, foreign language, all these things. But the main things, I think two more important skills are often neglected, like communication skills and social and interpersonal skills. Communication skills doesn't mean that a child can speak fluently, right? So I think like following and giving direction accurately, communicating information and understanding and processing information, requesting or offering assistance, all these things come under communication skills. Often children who have, like young people who have additional need, in order to mask their challenges, they hesitate to ask for help. Maybe you and I will not hesitate to ask for help, but they often do. And that uh, uh, like the situation gets worse because of this, that makes the life difficult for them as well. So I feel these are communication skills, and we need to inculcate these skills in young children so that when they grow up, uh, they can do it for themselves. What do you think, Michael?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more, Manobina. I mean, I think one of the questions that you sent me before this was around soft skills, and
Exactly, yeah.
and personally, I don't. It's a well-used phrase, isn't it? Soft skills, but I kind
Yeah,
of don't.
this is the question.
But
What
I
is
don't.
soft skills?
I don't like that term, soft skills, because it almost suggests they're not as important. But to me, they are the essential skills. So yeah, we're talking about, aren't we? We're talking about teamwork, interpersonal skills, problem solving. I just wrote a list here while I was just thinking about it. Adaptability.
Exactly.
Adaptability is so important. yeah, a lot of our youngsters with additional needs. I mean, I'm not going to say that all autistic children struggle with adaptability. You know, every individual young person is unique and very different. But generally, if there's something that a lot of autistic young people have in common, it is that difficulty in adapting to change. And
Yes.
that's what employers need. You know, they need that adaptability. So, you know, I just wrote a few more down, just thinking about it. You know, time management, teamwork.
Exactly.
So I'm always saying to people in the UK, let's stop calling them soft skills and put, you know, I don't know what we use instead, but like essential skills, because that's what gets you by in life, isn't it? And yeah, we need to be numerate literate and have all, you know, the hard skills, the ability to operate a machine or, you know, to word process and all those sort of things. But yeah, those soft skills or essential skills, we should call them, are absolutely vital. You're absolutely right, Manobina.
Yeah, and Michael, I also think that many other things can also be developed in young children, like when they are really young, like
Mm,
displaying appropriate behavior in school as well as workplace, right? Behavior and etiquette, knowing appropriate topics for discussion in the workplace. This is also something very
yeah,
important. Knowing when and when not to socialize on the job, right? And learning how to protect themselves from victimizations and like social problem solving techniques, I mean to say. And all these things can be inculcated, I think, if we start really early, and we can create work situation in the school itself. Maybe a child, school going young person can earn while they learn. So there is one more comment here. uh, Professor Sudesh Mukhopadhyay, life skill is the term used in literature and school curriculum now. It's not soft skill, that's what she's saying. Dr.
yeah,
Mukhopadhyay is
mm,
a pioneer in inclusive education in India. And
right.
Dr. Mukhopadhyay will be coming to Let's Talk Inclusion next week. So that's what she is saying, that it's not soft skill, the life skill
Yeah,
is.
life skills is something that that we're familiar with here as well. But I suppose we do need to promote that a little bit more because, you know, as it says, it's skills for life, isn't it? Without
Yeah.
those skills, you know, we're going to be continue to be, you know, segregated, marginalized, all those sort of things, because it's how you get on, you know, with your colleagues. And I suppose in a way, the discussion is a parallel one to what we want schools to be, isn't it? You know, we want schools to be accepting and inclusive. So it's that
Yeah.
thing, you know, do we make the child change and be different, which you could say we can work with. But if a child's autistic, you're autistic, aren't you? You know, you're not going to change really. You're always going to be autistic. It's about, just as we say, schools and you know, same for employers, isn't it? We need employers and fellow employees to think, okay, yeah, we know Michael, he's got autism, and sometimes he does this or he does that, and he might say some things that are a bit odd at times, but that's okay because that's Michael. He's really good at the job. He's really good at what we want him to do, and we just need to understand Michael a little bit more and not, you know, be mean to him and cruel to him or get rid of him because he's a bit funny at times. You know, that's all right, isn't it? That's what you know. We've got to have that inclusive outlook and accept everyone
Yeah.
for what they are, aren't we? You know, we've all got our, you know, quirkiness, haven't we? We've all got our things that we like to do. But if we can get young people in the job where their skill set and their interests are well suited, we can probably get around that, can't we? I always talk about a young person that I worked with quite a long time ago now, but he got a job in a supermarket, and he worked in the fruit and veg section. And one of his jobs was to take the boxes of apples and oranges and things and put them on the display. And he was brilliant at it because one of his skill sets, it was a real attention to detail. So he would make sure that everything was lined up correctly. You know, the displays look beautiful. You know, the way he'd arranged the fruit and the vegetables, you know, nobody else took that amount of time on it. But the difficulty was that when someone came along, a shopper, and took some apples away from his display, that caused him great anxiety, and he visibly got quite upset by that. So you start thinking, well, okay, he's got that skill, but we all need to appreciate that that's why he got a little bit flappy about it, because he'd taken so much pride in that neatness. That's just a story. I will never forget that. It's probably about 18 years ago now that I remember that young person. He was delightful. He was lovely, and he worked really hard at his job. But for the employer, that was a little bit. I'm not quite sure if the customers will like that. Him getting a little bit anxious about them taking fruit off his stall that he'd taken a long time and great pride in arranging really perfectly.
Yeah. There are some more questions, Michael.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Anjali. I think it's I suppose it's the biggest obstacle is the sort of things that we've been talking about, really. And again, I don't like saying all autistic children have this, or for autistic children, because they are all unique. If you know one autistic child, you know one autistic child, don't you? You don't know them all. But I think the biggest obstacle is what we've been saying around those life skills, essential skills we've been talking about, adaptability, teamwork, those sort of skills. That is what autistic children generally, I'm generalizing there, do struggle with, isn't it? They're fine, maybe working on their own, particularly, we do know, don't we, Silicon Valley in California, and the people that do all the games and all that, a lot of them, a high percentage of them, are on the autistic spectrum, because they are really, really good at focusing on the detail. They're more than happy to sit for hours in front of a computer screen. I can't do it for 10 minutes, so I've got to go for a walk around. But it's about those skills, isn't it? But put them in a role where they need to collaborate with people, then that might be harder for them. That might be another challenge. So I think, again, it's about another question I think you had was around counselling, wasn't it? Career counselling. We need people to sit down with young people with additional needs and sit and identify their strengths and their obstacles, and from that start thinking, okay, what sort of a job is best suited to this young person, and then we go and find out the environment for him or her. So I think the obstacles, we need to identify them, but I would say let's look at the strengths, because that's what inclusion is, isn't it? Inclusion is about us it's a strength-based model, isn't it? Inclusion, that whole principle and outlook, it's about finding what people are really, really good at and working back from there. I don't know if anybody wants to come in, any personal experience about obstacles that their young person or young people they know has worked with.
Yeah. So I would request the viewers, if you would like to share any experience, you can share your experience with us. Maybe we'll take it up from there. Okay. One more question. Mrs. Kavita Sharma is also very renowned. I think you know her.
Yes, hello, Kavita. Yeah, we are. We're linked, aren't we?
Yeah.
Disclosure. I'm not. I think I know what the question means. If we were having a conversation, we'd have worked it out within a second, wouldn't we? I think, is this about how much do we tell employers? Is that, how much we disclose with them, how much information about the young person that we share? So yes, it's a good question, because you don't want to, you don't want them to prejudge any young people that are coming in if we tell them everything. I think the key for me would be to agree it with the young person themselves. And depending on their age, with their parents as well, what they want to tell an employer, what they want an employer to know about them, and that might be two columns on a sheet of paper. Might what you need to know about me, and you can help me by. So you need to know that I will be on time every single day, and I will work every minute you ask me to work. You also need to know, though, that I don't understand nuance. So if my colleagues are making a bit of a joke, using sarcasm, for instance, I don't know what that means, and I might react negatively to that sort. So it's about, you know, and then what do you need from me? Well, can you, you know, provide some input to your employers on autism? You know, some of the basic things about autism or ADHD or whatever it is, just so that everyone is aware of the issue. So, yeah, you know, 2 columns: what I want you to know about me, and you can help me by, and then you can maybe list a few things that the employers can do as well to help.
Yeah. In general, a good time to disclose difference might be when you need to ask for a reasonable accommodation. So this
Yeah.
can be when you know that there is something in the workplace that is preventing you from competing for a job or performing a job well because of your autism. Uh, I think that is the right point. I think so personally, and
Mhm. Yeah,
I read an article on this on Autism Speaks. Autism Speaks, you know, Dr. Stephen Shore, you know him as well. I think there was an article on Autism Speaks, and it was mentioned there. Yes, sometimes, as you said, there some accommodations are needed in the workplace. Without that, it might have it might be difficult for an autistic person to perform. So in that case, disclosure is necessary. What do you think?
I don't know what the situation is in India, but in the UK we have very strong equalities legislation, and you know you mentioned you know accommodations, you know we call it reasonable adjustments here. You know, employers have a duty by law to make reasonable adjustments. You know, to
Oh,
someone's work or their role or whatever. I mean, the difficulty is though that, you know, who decides what is reasonable or not? That's the
exactly.
crux. And if things do go to a tribunal or a court, lawyers will argue hours and hours over what, you know, what does reasonable mean and how reasonable was it for the employee to expect that, or was it unreasonable for the employee to expect that? So there's a lot of discussion, but I think I think we do need some protection if possible. But if not, I suppose it's working with employers, isn't it, and organisations to help them understand about what the strengths that the young person is bringing, but also the things to
Exactly.
be aware of. Okay. All right. Good question. Good question. Another Michael as well. Great question. Yeah, I think I think you know the career counsellor was mentioned. I think it needs somebody who knows the young person really well, isn't it? Who understands them. So I think that role is pivotal. People in school, parents. You know, parents know their child better than anybody else, don't they? But also the young person themselves. I think it is sitting down and it's doing. Is it a SWOT analysis? Is that something that you're familiar with, Manobina or Michael? A SWOT analysis. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, if
Yes.
you Google it, SWOT,
Well,
SWOT,
you know,
SWOT analysis.
strength. We know SWOT analysis. This is a common thing here as well.
Yeah, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I don't like the word threat when it comes to talking about young people, but you know what I mean. So, what are the young person's strengths? You know, what are their weaknesses or areas of need? What are the opportunities? That's my favourite one. You know, what are their opportunities? You know, we've got a young person here who is really good at A, B, and C. They might struggle with D, but I tell you what, there's an employer down the road who is really looking for somebody with that profile. So it's identifying that, and then the threats would be, well, okay, maybe risks, maybe is a better would be a better word for it. You know, what are the risks of this young person working there? Are they going to, you know, react negatively to some of the colleagues and some of the things that is said or done? Are they going to be late every day? Are they going to be do they have some motor difficulties that might mean they could have an accident, perhaps? So, yeah, SWOT analysis. I think we probably want to change the words, won't we, a little bit to suit, you know, the sort of things that we're talking about in terms of inclusion. But I think it's sitting down with a big sheet of paper and going through that process. I think that's the way to identify, you know, how I mean, how we are going to align, you know, the work with someone's strengths, personality, temperament? That's a really good question. But involve everyone, including the young person. There's a lot of people that have a lot of information. I suppose it's getting them around the same table at the same time, if possible, isn't it? And working through it.
Once again, Michael.
Anyone else?
Are there specific psychological to identify which type of work or job would suitable for a person on autism spectrum Asperger, so that his or her work is aligned with strengths, personality, temperament? That it should be done. It should start really early. And all autistic persons are unique. Everyone is different from the other. So, as Michael said, that SWOT analysis is something very important. And also, I feel taking help from career counselor is also uh, career counseling needs to be done when the child is in school. It's not that when the child is maybe 25 years old, we are taking the young person to the career counselor. We should start it early so that we can work on the person's strengths, keeping in mind their weaknesses, and maybe something can be done accordingly. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. Again, I think. I mean, I think it's every young person is an individual and they're unique and they have strength. The specific unique strengths and it's a good question. I'm sorry, I've just been distracted there. They have strengths and particularly interests and obsessions. A lot of autistic young people they have obsessions, won't they? They'll be really focused on some things. Well, if you can find them a job in that area, wow, that bingo, isn't it? It really is a good thing. I think in terms of, I think it is taking that unique approach. I would say generally from my experience, and I don't really want to sort of, just reinforce the stereotype, but autistic young people do better in a job which does not require a lot of teamwork and conversations with others. So, in terms of processing and being creative in terms of a computer screen, it's scientists, mathematicians, those sort of skills, musicians. A lot of autistic young people have an ability with music, and if you just Google famous people with autism, lots of famous engineers and business people, people who come up with Apple and all those sort of things. There's lots and lots of strengths there. It is a stereotype, but I think so. I think whether there is a profile that fits, I'm loath to say it because I don't like stereotyping, but there is certainly something about that, isn't there?
True, very true.
And this is a really good question about role play and does it help for work readiness? I think it does help. Whether it solves the issue, I don't know, because I think the thing with role play is that we do it with people that we're usually comfortable with, in maybe a school or a college setting, and then when it suddenly goes to a different context or situation, that then goes back to the same sort of anxiety or worry or things before. But I would advocate it. I think maybe you're thinking about interviews, maybe, or some sort of work scenario. You put somebody behind a desk and someone comes in to complain. Maybe how would they handle that sort of thing? Maybe it's things to say, things not to say. So I think it's a good idea. I always enjoy role play anyway. I think it's good. So yeah, go for it.
One more question. How can schools support neurodiverse students for post-school planning?
I think for me, it goes back to what I've already said. In terms of taking the conversations as way back to as early as possible. Don't leave it to the last year at school or the last term. I think it's really important that we do plan it. And the visual that I showed at the start. I think, you know, that's our thinking here in the UK, is we start at the start of secondary education. I would advocate go back into primary, actually, and you know, and why not children in the nursery setting? Why, you know, we can talk to them about. I know children at nursery will say they want to be an astronaut or something, and we're not going to suddenly put everything in place to get them to be an astronaut when they leave school. But I think we can start to get an idea of the sort of aspirations they might have, things that they enjoy, and just take it through primary. Of course, they'll change, but I think we need to keep talking to youngsters about, you know, their aspirations and what they want to do, and it's just good to know, isn't it? You know, as well as from a, you know, in terms of a nursery, I mean, we start talking about being independent as possible, don't we? We want them to be independent, moving around the nursery and the activities. You know, we will be beginning to teach them life skills. You know, we have the home area or the food tech area, and we have youngsters preparing their own snack from a very early age. It's all part of that same process, I think. You know, getting dressed independently and changed, making choices. I suppose it's helping the youngest children from the very beginning in school to you know, to self-advocate, to be able to express their views, to be able to make choices. You know, and we talked, don't we, about children with the more complex SEND and, you know, communication difficulties, you know, using signs and symbols, picture boards. So I think it's all part of the same process, right from early years education right up until they leave college. Obviously, the closer we get to them leaving school and college, we are talking more about work, skills, what they need to do, maybe in terms of qualifications as well. But I don't know if that answered your question, Archana. I probably waffled on again, really. But
And
start early. Start early.
And Michael, I think it's compulsory in the UK to have work experience when you are 16
Yeah.
in high school, but it isn't like this in India. So what in Indian scenario, what I feel that school administrators and staff members can help students prepare for the world of work in a number of ways. And this work experience or voluntary experience is the most important one. And to do so effectively, they should have a working knowledge of the stages of career development. In general, the three most important goals for students are to gain an understanding of themselves and their abilities, interests, and values. Gain an understanding of the world of work, that is very important, and acquire practical decision making skills. And
Yeah.
each of these areas is important for students' ability to make a realistic and informed decision about employment. And school based activities should focus on these three areas. I know Archana is my colleague, I know her personally, and she is doing a wonderful job in the school where she is working. She takes care of a vocational rehabilitation unit. The students are of 16 to 22 years of age, and Archana does all these things very well with role plays and decision making skills development. Everything she is doing, and maybe that is why she has asked this question. So,
Yeah.
Archana, whatever
Good.
you are doing, what I know about you is wonderful. You are doing a great job, great job. So,
Good on you,
actually, I just
Archana. Good on you. Archana, I don't know if you're still at the keyboard. What do you think works best in terms of your young people and employment, and what would you say is the biggest barrier? I don't know if you can frontally type away there. I think it'd just be good to hear from you.
yeah, I don't know whether Archana is there. Archana, if you are still there, I'm sure you are there. If you can,
Yeah, it'd be good to hear. Yeah, what's working best,
yeah.
and what is the biggest barrier? Do you know what I think, Manobina?
Yeah.
I think, you know, I think we keep coming back to the importance of, you know, what was termed soft skills or life skills. I mean, I think it does come back to that, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And you know, I think the importance of us promoting that in our
Yeah.
schools, um, it, yeah, rather than the skills for, because we do talk about, well, what skills do employers need, and generally it is about literacy, numeracy, computing, those sort of things. But actually, adaptability, time management, getting on with people, that probably is the key, isn't it? And I think I look back to my, you know, early employment days before I became a teacher. You know, and I worked in, you know, manual jobs. I was in a merchant navy for a spell, and I remember some of the characters that I was with. And I suppose at the time I didn't really think of them as having SEND or additional needs, but looking back,
Mhm.
they did. And what I remember about it is that how we all accommodated them, because I mean we didn't think of it as never heard of inclusion. I hadn't, the word inclusion, things like that, but we accommodated them. We understood them and we valued them for what they brought to the job. And I think, you know, going back to, I think there needs to be a partnership between schools, colleges, and employers,
Mhm. Yeah.
to sort of just work through those things. And I don't know, Manobina, maybe you and your colleagues locally, maybe you need to go and put on some sessions, for
Yeah, I'm
employers.
trying to do so. I'm trying to do so, honestly. And what I find in my experience that many students tend to have unrealistic career expectations, and they either overestimate or underestimate their potential for a specific career. So here, I think teachers, we as teachers, we can encourage, guide, and redirect students with unrealistic expectations towards more realistic career goals. And I think parents should join hands with the teachers for this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because you know I've met young people and I say, well, what do you want to do? And they'll say something like, well, I want to join the police, or I want to join the army. And knowing the young person, you know that isn't realistic, and that won't be the right job
Mhm.
for them. So it is about, you know, redirecting, and talking that through, isn't it? It's about understanding, isn't it? You know what the role means as well, because we can all look at someone's job and think, oh, that looks a nice job, but until we you know walk a mile in that person's shoes, so to speak, it's quite
Mhm.
enlightening, isn't it? You know,
Exactly.
I work with trainee teachers, and often it takes a while for them to realise what a hard job teaching is.
Yeah.
They think it seems, oh, that sounds a nice job. Turn up at 9 o'clock, teach them children, and go home again at 3. You know, it's ridiculous.
And for us here, Michael, our we start school at 7:25 and leave from
Wow.
there at quarter to 3.
Well, there you go. There you go. You see, so it's not the easy job that everyone thinks it is, are they?
Yeah, yeah. Now
But
Archana
I
has
think,
replied, Michael. Archana has replied. What I feel is that to earn money should not be the only motive for the young persons. Their happiness and well-being matters a lot. Yeah, very
yeah,
true.
excellent.
Very true. Very true.
And I think that goes back to, thanks for that, Archana. I think it goes back to, you know, what I was talking about earlier on. Rather than seeing employment, as the only the part of it, I think it's about being part of the community, having friendships, relationships, being as
Yeah.
independent as
Very important.
possible, you know, being healthy, all those sort of things. And yeah, and maybe it's not always about how much you're going to earn, but it's about, you know, them doing something they feel they've got some purpose and some value. You know, I see young people that I taught years ago. I see them in work now, and I'm really impressed. You know, you know, I've got it's something in Yorkshire called dry stone walling. That may
Mhm.
not, yeah, that may not mean anything to you. Well, but basically, it's building walls without cement or any sand. It's quite a traditional craft. This
Yeah.
guy, he is brilliant at it. He excels at it. And one of the reasons is he's up on the moors with maybe one or two other guys that understand him, and he just works away. He'll just work for hours and hours and hours. So, and I don't think he'll learn a lot, but he's part of that friendship group, and he's valued, and everyone says how brilliant he is at it. So that's what that's what we should be striving for, isn't it? Rather than earning money. So I think that's a good point. Well-being is really important, isn't it? How you feel about yourself.
Yeah. One more. So renowned educationist, Mrs. Vijaya Prakash, I think you know her as well, Michael. In school, when kids are small, if we can give them opportunities to participate in various activities, we begin to see their strengths. As they grow up, we include activities where essential life skills, problem solving skills, pre vocational skills can be honed. It if career counselors or employers could prepare a list of specific skills they expect for each type of job that people with special needs can handle, it will help parents and teachers to prepare the youth better. Very much
Yeah,
so.
Vijaya, very, really good point there, and I like the idea of, I mean, a lot of jobs will have a person specification, but I think it'd be better, as maybe you're suggesting there, to have some bullet pointed, almost a checklist
Yeah.
for each role. So yes, to work in a shop, you need this, and that. To work in an office, you need yeah. I think that's a really good idea, and then you can create almost like a profile, an employment profile for each young
Yeah.
person. Couldn't you? Little booklet with the skills they need, and I am working towards becoming and to become, I don't know, a receptionist at the office. I need to be able to do this, and a list again. So yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I mean,
And
what
I
I mean,
can, yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yes, Michael, carry on, please. Carry on.
In terms of your area, I mean, what are the major employers? What are the major jobs? I mean, you're in a city, aren't you? So I'd be saying most cities, I guess. But is there anything specific, any roles that are unique to your area?
Yes, in the government, in the legislation rather, we have some specific roles. And in the next episode, we are going to talk about it. Professor Mukhopadhyay is going to talk about it. But at the same time, we have very limited options, I must say. And in the private companies, as you know, and see, it is not very. If you talk about the disability which is hidden, like autism, we call it a neurological difference, but at the same time, in the legislation, it is called a disability, and it's a hidden disability.
Yeah.
So here, many a time, people fail to understand what difficulty an autistic person must be facing, and that is why many times the getting a job or retaining a job becomes a very big problem in private organizations, where it is a crowdfunding organization, or maybe something which like data entry operation, you can say a back office job. Everywhere it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And what I feel that as we are talking about, as Mrs. Vijaya Prakash was talking about giving us some suggestions, I want to add something to it, Vijaya ma'am, that teachers in school, when a child is in school, teachers should incorporate real world applications into their instructions. I feel
Yeah.
so, and discuss how the skills that are being taught are used in occupations that are of high interest of students. And teachers can also introduce a career theme for a day and talk about how the subject they are teaching is used in the career. For example, if food services, the theme a teacher might talk about measuring quantities, keeping track of stocked goods, making changes, balancing the books, and so on and so forth. The teachers can also provide students with work experiences by setting up a stimulated work environment in the classroom. And as
Yeah.
I said Students can earn while they learn. Students can be paid for work. So, along with academic skills, all these social skills, everything can be
A lot of
taught.
special schools here will have some sort of enterprise element to this. So some special school will have a shop in
Yeah.
the town or the village. They'll have a shop, and the youngsters make things, and they sell them in the shop. So they're getting used to the world of work themselves. I think in mainstream schools struggle more. I think here special schools have more more freedom, I guess, to do that. So they will, and they will have, in terms of workshops and things like that, that young people can use and develop some skills, and it
Yeah,
does
and
become
then,
almost like a workplace. Yeah.
yeah, the reading job advertisements or creating resumes or maybe
Yeah.
mock job interviews. All these things can be done early on, but I feel otherwise, if you are at an age of employment and that time you are starting all these things, it might be a bit late. That's what I personally feel.
Yeah, I start early. That's what I've been saying, isn't it? Start early. Can I just make one point? You just mentioned about the sort of private and the public
Yeah.
sector. I think it's interesting that generally public sector work, I think our local council, education, social care, they are more inclusive and outward looking rather than the private sector. And I know I'm stereotyping, but the private sector will think about reputation of their company, profit, those sort of things. Whereas the public sector, and maybe it's about the people that tend to work for public sectors, have a more inclusive outlook and maybe a more accepting of young people in the workplace with additional needs. That's just an observation. How accurate that is.
Actually,
That's my
DEI
perspective.
is something. Now, many organizations are adopting the DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a part of their policy, but they need training, of course. But this should be two ways. The person who is getting adopted by that organization, he or she also needs some training, and so are the employer and their colleagues, the so-called regular or typical colleagues. So it should be both the ways. Generally, what happens in the offices, people think the person who is coming, uh, he or she will have to adopt, and the young people who have some of the other challenges, they think that we will be given some accommodation. But
Yeah.
there are need of learning about all these things for both the parties. Otherwise, one might get a job, but retention can be a problem, definitely. So and
Yeah.
as
Interesting.
you said, I'm trying in my like in my personal capacity also. I'm trying to speak to the local organizations here, as well as the young persons. But yeah, we have a long way to go. Things are not streamlined, but in India, in many places, people are working on this.
I
And
think, Manobina, you would be. I think you said you already started it, but I think for you and to get a few others in your local area to contact employers and offer them
planning
some
to do so.
awareness or some guidance and some mentoring. I think that's the way, because I think sometimes what I found in the past is that employers really do value certain
Mhm.
skill sets, and they do
Yeah.
appreciate what
Yes.
young people with SEND can bring to their organization. So I think it's maybe employees need some reassurance, maybe that it's
Exactly.
going to be okay.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a little bit of fear about employing people with additional needs because they don't understand them and they don't know them and they don't have experience of them. But I think, I mean, we find young people with additional needs fantastic, don't we? I love being with
Yeah,
them, and
definitely.
but then employers, if you don't know them, there could be a little bit of fear, maybe a little bit of fear of the unknown, I suppose, isn't it? So I think, Manabina, you and is that Archana? Did you say that she's in your local area? Get together and get out and about and start to explain and
Yeah, we often talk about it, and let us see what can be done. And we'll be needing your support, Michael, along the way.
I'll be more than happy to help. More than happy, Manobina. You know that. You know that. You guys are doing a great job out there. Fantastic job. Against the odds, really. You know, in the UK, things are a little bit. I won't say easier, but you know, it's established. You know, we have an established. You know, systems and safeguards and things like that. You're doing some great job, but I suppose the context is a little bit trickier, I guess.
True. Yeah. Anyways, it's almost an hour. We have been discussing about it. Thank you very much, Michael, for all your support for
You're
all
welcome.
these. So before we sign off for today, any concluding comment, Michael?
I suppose just to say again, start early, you know, in terms of preparing young people, start as early as you can, you know, in their primary years, ideally, start talking to them about work and what their aspirations are for when they leave school. And I think also, just as we were saying, I think partnerships with local employers, you know, I think it's building that relationship with employers, isn't it? And helping them to feel confident, really, that taking on young people with additional needs will be a real bonus for their company, and you know, and not something to be worried about or concerned about. But that'll take a lot of time. But I'm confident, Manobina, that you're on it. You're on it. So keep going.
Thank you very much. One more comment. Yes, you were right. For example, in maths, when we have to do billing, profit and loss, we have an actual shop set up by groups of kids where different roles and jobs are assigned. Other kids visit and buy things. All kids with or without challenges participate. We can participate this. We can replicate this model of experimental learning in more areas of work. Very true, Vijaya ma'am.
Yeah,
Archana does the same
that
thing.
sounds great. That sounds great. Yeah, brilliant. That's just what you need, isn't it? You need one of those shops on every corner.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, Michael. Thanks a lot.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
And many thanks to our viewers for your
Yes.
most enthusiastic participation. So we will come back next Friday with Professor Sudesh Mukhopadhyay, a pioneer in the field of inclusion in India. Please keep an eye on our Facebook page for further information about that episode. See you next week. Till then, take care and goodbye. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Bye bye.
Michael. Bye bye.